You're not in a courtroom. You're in a processing line. Your wrists aren't bound with rope, but with something smoother, expensive, chosen by someone who understands that bruises show up in records and questions. The floor under your knees is slick. The air tastes of oil, smoke, and old stone. Somewhere above you, Damascus is waking up. Down here, the city is taking inventory. You hear it before you see anything. From one doorway, sobbing, steady, like a chant that's gone wrong. From another, nothing. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. From a third, male voices, wine cups touching, someone reciting poetry in a language you barely understand. Your name is Catherine. You're 23. 3 months ago, you thought you were protected. 3 months ago, in a coastal city clinging to the last pieces of Crusader territory, your father stood in a courtyard holding out a piece of parchment as if it were armor. A contract. Seals. Arabic and Latin. Signatures from Mamluk officials who promised safe passage for his goods and his family. He believed that agreements, stamps, and law could stop what was coming through the city walls. In the spring of 1260, when Mamluk forces finally broke into Acre, he learned, too late, that paper burns faster than people bleed. Those careful contracts flared and vanished in the same courtyard where he died, still gripping proof of a protection that never existed. In the chaos, hands grabbed you and your mother in different directions. You shouted her name until your voice ripped. You never found out if she survived the first hour of conquest. History will not tell you. The records weren't made for that. Now you are underground in Damascus, 3 months later, with 17 other women pressed against a stone wall. All taken in the same campaign. All Christian. All waiting for a man you've never met to decide what you will be used for. He arrives without a sword. His robe is spotless, his hands empty. Guards step aside for him with the reflexive respect soldiers give commanders. He isn't here to fight. He's here to place orders. In official Mamluk paperwork, his job title will be translated as something harmless, integration official, placement overseer. It sounds like social work. It is not. You watch him move down the line, and this is the moment where most people like to imagine a villain, a sadist, a monster, someone easy to hate. But that's not what is standing in front of you. What is in front of you is a functionary in a system that has turned human transformation into statecraft. Because here's the part your school textbooks probably skipped. Every sultan, every senior Mamluk commander, every officer whose orders shaped the medieval Middle East started as someone else's property. Boys taken from Turkic tribes, from the Caucasus, bought as children, cut off from their old world, converted to Islam, drilled in combat and bureaucracy until the original self was gone. By their 20s, they were elite soldiers. By their 30s, they were running armies. In 1250, one of them seized the Egyptian throne. Former slaves became the ruling class. That created a cold, dangerous idea at the core of their empire. If you can deliberately strip a child of one identity and install another, why stop with soldiers? So they scaled it. 7 major processing complexes in Damascus alone. Medical checks within a day of arrival. Lists that note where you're from, how old you are, whether you limp when you walk. Ledgers that track death rates and work output the way other governments track grain. You are not chaos to them. You are throughput. This is Dark Empire Histories. We don't protect myths. We expose the systems that built them. The man in the spotless robe, his name in the records is Tashamor, speaks to each woman not once, but in multiple tongues. Arabic, Armenian, Frankish. Sometimes he switches mid-sentence. He's not showing off. He's testing. He isn't asking, "Are you afraid?" He's asking, "Can you be reshaped?" Because the state needs many things: fighters, servants, field labor, clerks, and women who can do what free women of similar status either cannot or will not. Every answer he hears helps sort you toward a particular use. If you're still watching, you're already doing more than most chroniclers of the time, who skimmed over women like Catherine as side notes in the margins. If you think their lives deserve more than a footnote, hit subscribe so this story isn't buried again under great men and their wars. Back in the chamber, Tashamore reaches you at last. He looks at you the way a quartermaster looks at a shipment. Not tender, not cruel, just calculating. When he finally speaks, it's in your language, clean, precise Frankish French. And in that instant, without knowing it, you are about to make a decision that will lock you onto a single path toward one of those 3 doors. Before we step through it, I want to hear from you. If you were Catherine, would you admit everything you can do, or would you try to disappear into the crowd? Tell me in the comments what you think you'd choose, and what you afraid you actually would. Because in part 2, we're going to open those doors and see exactly how an empire turns women into categories. If you want the next part, stay with me. Not all prisons need chains. Some use crowds. And when you look back years later, Catherine, you will remember that the first door opened with an almost ceremonial slowness, as if the hinges themselves understood this wasn't punishment, but presentation. You don't know it yet, but this room beyond door 1 is the Mamluk Empire's quiet masterpiece. A place where humiliation is not an accident of war, but a calibrated instrument. Not torture, not violence. Something colder. Public obedience training. A courtyard opens before you. Sunlit, deceptively peaceful. Rows of women sit on stone benches, hair cut short in a way that isn't punishment but standardization. Their clothing is loose, uniform, designed to erase individual status markers. They are arranged so precisely it looks like a liturgy. And that's the point. The system isn't looking for suffering. It's looking for order. As your eyes adjust, you notice the men in the far left corner. Officials, not merchants. Their robes are crisp. Their hands never touch the women. They examine posture, speech, signs of dissent. This isn't buying. This is evaluation. One woman is instructed to stand and walk. Not to demonstrate beauty, to demonstrate compliance in motion. You watch the way she keeps her eyes lowered just enough to signal deference, but not fear. Someone drilled her in that exact angle. When she hesitates on the 3rd step, the official marks her parchment. Not a punishment, just a cost adjustment. This is where most viewers want to look away, but if you turn from this, you miss the real machinery. So if you're still watching, lean in. Door 1 isn't the bad door. It's not the worst fate here. It's the template door. Women sent through this corridor are destined for domestic labor in military households. They will clean, serve, mend. Their value is predictable and low risk. The empire doesn't fear them, doesn't need to reshape them deeply, doesn't consider them potential threats or assets beyond the basics. They are processed, ranked, distributed. It is humiliating. It is dehumanizing. But it is not the darkest room in this building. You see it in their faces. Shame, yes, but also something else. A flicker of hope that maybe this assignment means survival. People can survive drudgery. You can't survive disappearance. Tell me in the comments. What's worse, a life where you are seen but not valued, or a life where you are invisible entirely? I'm genuinely curious how you read this moment. Back in the chamber behind you, Tashamore continues his evaluations. His voice drifts across the courtyard whenever another candidate is brought through. He's not sorting women into categories. He's sorting future identities. The woman next to you, a girl, really, has just returned from her assessment. Tears streak down her face, but her expression is not terror. It's defeat. She has been designated for household rotation, the lowest classification. She will be moved often, broken in quickly, forgotten even faster. Watching her, you feel something solid twist in your stomach. You don't know what's behind door 2 yet, but for the first time, you fear fate by dilution almost as much as fate by brutality. Because the Empire doesn't need to torture you to make you vanish. It can just move you between rooms until no one remembers your name. And here's where the story cracks open. Tashamore finally steps into the courtyard, scanning the rows. His parchment is now filled with marks, symbols, notes, an entire life compressed into shorthand. When his eyes land on you, it's not triumph or pity. It's recognition. He already knows which door you're for. Because you didn't just answer his question. You revealed something he wasn't expecting. That you can read across cultures. That you speak languages he didn't test you on. That your father trained you like a merchant's apprentice. He saw the hesitation when he handed you that wax tablet. He saw the calculation. That's why you're not staying in this sunlit courtyard. Door 1 is for women the system can predict. Door 2 is for women it can liquidate. Door 3, the one he's about to take you through, is for women it wants to rewrite. If you're still here, make sure you're subscribed. The next reveal changes the nature of Catherine's story entirely, because part 3 will take you into the quietest place in the entire complex, the room where identity isn't punished, it's erased on purpose. Stay with me. You don't realize it at first, not when the guards close the courtyard gate behind you, not when Tashamore steers you through a narrow hall that smells of parchment and incense. It's only when the corridor bends and the noise of the world disappears that you understand. This is not a place meant for crowds. This is a place meant for conversion. Not religious conversion, something sharper. A conversion of self. When the door closes, the silence hits like a blow. The chamber is smaller than you expected. Thick carpets swallow sound. A single bronze mirror hangs on one wall, polished to a shine that looks unnatural in a room with no windows. The mirror is not decoration. It's a tool. 3 other women sit in a row, back straight, hands folded, not restrained, but trained. Their expressions do not match their circumstances. They look emptied, not broken, not terrified, just hollow. If door 1 was obedience, this is obliteration. And this, right here, is the Mamluk version of a trial. Not by fire, not by water, not by divine intervention. This is a trial by malleability. The empire does not ask God to reveal your truth. It decides what your truth must become. And if you fail to match what it wants, you're discarded. This is where most medieval European ordeals sought signs of innocence or guilt, floating or sinking, burning or healing. But the Mamluk system isn't interested in justice, Catherine. It's interested in utility. Tashamore doesn't speak to you right away. He allows the room to speak first. The quiet, the carpet, the mirror, the 3 women who have already undergone weeks of recalibration. When he finally addresses you, his tone is not threatening. It's instructional. He explains that this is the first phase of identity stripping, a controlled environment where everything you say, do, and even hesitate on is recorded. Not in words, in observations. You're not here to prove innocence. You're here to demonstrate potential for reconstruction. You're here because you passed the test. You could read a line of Arabic poetry from a wax tablet. You hesitated but didn't lie. You understood the stakes and chose survival over self-preservation. The system likes that combination. Tashamore gestures, and you sit beside the others. Then Sophia enters. She is older, Armenian by origin, and moves like someone who has been here too long to remember another kind of life. Her presence carries authority, not granted, but internalized. She is what you will become if you survive. Sophia doesn't ask your name. Names come later. Instead, she begins the first lesson, unlearning. Your posture, your inflections, the Christian idioms you aren't even aware you use, the way your shoulders lift when you're frightened, the way your vowels reveal your birthplace, even the way you breathe when you're about to speak. Sophia corrects it all, not with violence, with relentless precision. This is where the system separates those who can be reshaped from those who break. A European ordeal tries to force the truth out of the body. This one tries to delete what the body remembers. And here's the sinister part. Over time, it works. You practice new greetings, new prayer phrases, new modes of deference, new body rhythms that align with the empire's architecture. A woman who refuses? She's escorted back through door 2. No one tells you what happens after that. But you remember glimpses from your arrival. Rows of women in the lower markets, the ones marked for hard labor. Women limping from injuries. Women whose eyes no longer tracked movement. Women who would be worked until their usefulness expired. Suddenly, Sophie's corrections feel like a lifeline. It's in this phase that the psychological trial intensifies. The empire monitors how you respond to deprivation, not of food or sleep, but of identity cues. No crosses, no familiar prayers, no languages spoken the way you grew up hearing them, no reminders of home. Instead, repetition, silence, correction, repetition. Most viewers imagine trials as dramatic moments, fire and spectacle. But in this chamber, the horror is quiet, methodical, medical. If you're still here, let me know in the comments. Which is more terrifying, pain that happens fast, or a slow erosion that makes you forget who you were? Because Catherine is beginning to feel the second one. The first week targets your tongue. The second targets your reflexes. The third, your memory. By week 4, Sophia no longer calls you you. She uses new titles, new modes of address, new relational markers. When you answer without thinking, she nods. It means the molding is taking. And this is where the viewer should understand something crucial. The Mamluk ruling class didn't invent cruelty. They invented scalability. What you're enduring wasn't improvised. It followed a script refined over decades. Everything that made Catherine Catherine is being peeled away so the state can rebuild her into something profitable. And yet, something in you refuses to vanish. Something waits. Something watches. Something survives the erasure. In part 4, we're going to see what the state adds back into you once it has taken everything else away, and why that addition comes with a cost the system thinks you reshaped to resist. If you want the next part, stay with me. By the time you reach week 5, Catherine, the system has already taken so much from you that you don't immediately notice the next shift. That's the trick of it. The first phase is subtraction, language, posture, instinct. But the second phase is addition. And what they add is far more dangerous. Sophia begins arriving with ledgers instead of correction rods, with scrolls instead of silence. Suddenly, you're not repeating phrases, you're copying them. Not walking drills, you're managing lists. Your fingers learn the curves of Mamluk calligraphy, the slant of formal Arabic, the tone required for diplomatic correspondence. This isn't servitude. This is training. You're being shaped for a household where literacy is power and literacy is vulnerability, because those who can read secrets can also be blamed for them. Those who can translate messages can be punished for their content. Those who can write letters can be ordered to forge them. Women in your class aren't taught to wash floors. They're taught to read minds. But here's the part the empire never writes down. This training isn't neutral. It carries another expectation. Night duties. Sophia doesn't say the words at first. She circles them, explains hierarchy, explains that women with your classification will serve in households where young men must complete their education. She explains that wives of rank cannot be used for such lessons without damaging alliances. So they use you, and they don't pretend it's anything else. Sophia lays it out the way a medic describes treating a wound, without emotion, without cruelty, without hope, just procedure. This will be required of you, she says. This will ensure your place. This will preserve your life. Not because the household is monstrous, because the system demands it. If you're still watching, you should pause and ask yourself something. Which is more horrifying, when cruelty is deliberate or when it's standardized? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Because what's coming next isn't improvised abuse. It's institutional curriculum. The first time you're told to prepare, you feel something freeze inside you. Not fear. Something colder. The knowledge that this role wasn't assigned because of who you are, but because of how well you can disappear behind a function. Your usefulness isn't physical. It's psychological. You can endure without breaking. You can perform without attachment. You can dissociate without revealing the fracture. The empire calculates this, and it rewards durability. When you're transferred into the household of Emir Calawan, still a commander then, years before becoming sultan. You see the scale of what you've been prepared for. His compound is huge, humming with soldiers, bureaucrats, wives, attendants, rivals, allies. An ecosystem. You aren't dropped into a family. You're dropped into an administrative organism. Zara, the senior wife, receives you with the cool professionalism of someone who runs a political institution, not a home. She reads your paperwork. She tests your script on the spot. She inspects the precision of your seals. You perform flawlessly. Good. That means they'll keep you. You're assigned a workspace, a small alcove facing a courtyard. Sunlight streams in, the only mercy the architecture offers. You spend your days drafting letters, arranging salon invitations, noting which households owe which favors. You become the eyes and ears of women who wield soft power with the accuracy of archers. But night reclaims you. You know the pattern before they speak it aloud. Twice weekly. Set hours. Supervised. Documented. This is not romance. This is not intimacy. This is a schedule. A young man, Calawan's son, arrives with the awkward pride of someone told it's time to become what the empire calls a man. His education involves governance, war, administration, and you. You do not resist. You do not encourage. You do not feel. Sophia trained you too well. You perfect the mental distance every woman in your category must learn. The ability to remain present in body while your mind folds itself into a smaller, safer corner. The empire calculates this, too. A woman who can split herself this way lasts longer, costs less in replacements, creates fewer disruptions. You are not being broken. You are being refined. And here's the chilling truth. At some point, maybe month 6, maybe month 9, you stop thinking of your previous self as something alive. She becomes a story you once heard. And that's when the system makes its final mistake. It gives you responsibility. It gives you a girl, a new Armenian captive, freshly processed, shaking the same way you once shook. You are told to teach her correspondence, teach her posture, teach her obedience. But when she lifts her eyes and you see your own terror reflected back at you across 3 long years, something shifts, something the system thought it erased. In part 5, that shift becomes a spark, and that spark threatens to split the entire structure wide open. If you want the next part, stay with me. It begins quietly. A new girl arrives, Armenian, like Sophia once was. Small, fragile. Her wrists tremble even when her hands are still. She holds herself as though waiting to be struck, and you recognize that posture immediately. You wore it once, before the training, before Calawan's household became the architecture of your survival. You're told to remake her, just as Sophia remade you. You're supposed to erase her accent, her prayers, her posture. You're supposed to prepare her for day duties, night duties, the endless cycle of service. You're supposed to teach her how to vanish inside herself without screaming. That's the job. But when she looks at you with those hollow, frightened eyes, when she whispers a question in broken Armenian, hoping you can understand, you feel something old rising in your chest. Something the training buried under layers of obedience and habit. Recognition, memory, self. The empire's calculations never accounted for this moment. They refined your skills. They sharpened your discipline. They relied on your endurance. But they forgot that endurance isn't the same thing as loyalty. And watching this girl tremble through her lessons, you understand a truth most systems try to hide. Replicated brutality doesn't just harm the victim. It corrodes the executor. If you're still watching, ask yourself something in the comments. What would be harder, enduring the system or becoming its instrument? Because Catherine is facing that question now. Every correction you give this girl feels like betrayal of your own past self. Every word you speak sounds like Sophia's voice coming out of your mouth. Every lesson you deliver confirms something you never admitted. You were not saved. You were repurposed. And now the system wants you to be the sculptor, not the clay. One night, as the girl fumbles her pronunciation during a writing drill, Zara appears in the doorway. She evaluates the scene with the practiced eye of someone who understands people the way generals understand terrain. Will she be ready? Zara asks. You freeze. The girl freezes. The entire room feels suspended. There is only one correct answer. The system expects it. Sophia gave it for years. Yes, you should say. She will adapt. But you can't. And in that instant, in that refusal, you discover something the empire depends on being impossible. You still have a boundary. You still have a line you fear crossing more than death. You still have enough of yourself left to say a quiet, devastating truth. No, you whisper. She can't do this. She's too afraid. Zara's eyes flicker. A brief expression, surprise, calculation, irritation, but then it's gone. You've already said the words. You can't pull them back into your mouth. Hours later, the consequences arrive. A steward enters your workspace. His voice is neutral, professional. You are relieved of training duties. The new girl is reassigned. Reassigned. A simple word with brutal implications. Not everyone who disappears into reassignment comes out again. You tell yourself the transfer might save her. You tell yourself she might be placed somewhere gentle, somewhere structured, somewhere survivable. But you don't know. You will never know. And that not knowing becomes its own wound. Because the moment that girl is taken away, something inside you cracks, not from punishment, but from the realization that complicity isn't always visible. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it happens simply because you obeyed too long. This fracture grows over the next weeks. You carry it like a stone under your ribs. Every petition you write, every marriage negotiation you record, every letter you seal reminds you. You have become part of the machine. And now, for the first time, you want out. The Mamluk system has one outlet, one pressure valve, one sanctioned path through which those who have served long enough, well enough, usefully enough can attempt to step outside its grip, the petition audience. Weekly, public, heavily controlled, and almost never used by women from the household sections. Most remain silent. Most play their roles until they age out or break down. Most never dare to speak before a sultan. But you, Catherine, are not most. You've survived 12 years. You've mastered their scripts. You've memorized their laws. You've learned their bureaucracy better than some of their own officers. You know there are precedents for manumission. Obscure, rare, but real. And if those laws exist, they can be invoked. You begin preparing your petition in secret. Not a plea, not a cry for mercy, a legal argument, grounded in precedent, citing exact service years, footnoted with household records, records you keep. You're going to walk into a room where women are supposed to be invisible and speak directly to a man who commands armies. And you know exactly what might happen if he rejects your words. A beating, enslavement reclassified, sale to a harsher household, or the quiet disappearance so many others endured. But something in you is done with erasure. Something in you would rather risk destruction than continue dissolving into usefulness. In Part 6, you will step into that audience chamber, break a rule no enslaved woman has broken before, and alter the trajectory of your life with one sentence. If you want to see how Catherine defies an empire, stay with me. They don't search you when you enter the audience chamber. Why would they? You're not a threat. You have no weapon. You have no allies. You are a woman from the household wing, someone who exists at the administrative edges of power, never in its center. And that's exactly why what you're about to do works. The chamber is vast, colder than you expect. Light filters through carved screens, turning the dust into floating patterns. Petitioners stand in a long, orderly arc. Merchants with tax quarrels, elders from Damascus seeking arbitration, landowners disputing boundaries. Their issues are recognized, legible, acceptable. Yours is not. You've spent nights drafting your petition, every line chosen with surgical intent. You've memorized the legal phrasing. You've checked and cross-checked Islamic jurisprudence on manumission, citing the clauses that favor faithful service and documented utility. You've stacked your case not on emotion, But on law, your hands don't tremble. That surprises you. And then Sultan Calawan enters. The chamber stills the way forests still before lightning. His presence is not wrathful or cruel, just absolute. A man who rose from enslavement to rule one of the most powerful states in the medieval world. A man formed by the same system that swallowed you whole. A man who should have been sympathetic to people remade by power, but who understood better than anyone the machinery required to stay on the throne. You are counting on that. You are counting on him understanding the cost of obedience. As the last merchant finishes, a pause settles over the chamber. The brief silence where scribes shuffle papers and guards shift their stance. This is your opening. You step forward, and the air changes. Women from the harem quarters do not speak here. Not unless invited. Not unless addressed. Not unless someone of rank introduces them. You do it anyway. In perfect Arabic, without quaver, without apology, you say, I submit a petition for manumission on the basis of 12 years of faithful service in the household of Emir Calawan. Gasps. A ripple through the room. Even the guards don't move at first, not because they accept your presence, but because their brains can't process the violation. You continue. I have provided correspondence services, language administration, and the training of junior personnel. My work is documented in the household ledgers. I ask for release into paid employment, as permitted under established legal precedents. You place your scroll on the floor between you and the Sultan, and step back. This is not begging. This is not rebellion. This is litigation. For a heartbeat, Calawan says nothing. His eyes fix on you, not with cruelty, but with the intense calculation of a man evaluating a threat he didn't anticipate. A woman who has learned the system well enough to use it against him. A woman who has survived the very machine he commands and now stands in front of him with its rules in her hands. He turns to the Qadi, the chief jurist. Is the petition legally structured? The Qadi unrolls the scroll, reads, cross-references. His brow furrows. Then he speaks. It is sound. This moment, this one sentence, is what every empire fears, the system verifying its own vulnerability. Because if you serve flawlessly for 12 years, if your value is documented by their own scribes, if your case aligns with the law written by their own scholars, then denying you would expose the system as arbitrary. Calawan doesn't want that. No ruler does. And so he says the words that alter your life. Granted. It's done. Just like that. Years of obedience. Years of reconstruction. Years of being half self, half function. And now you are free, in the technical sense. Because here is the truth they don't tell you during manumission. Freedom isn't a doorway. It's a desert. You can't return to Acre. It has fallen. You can't return to your parents. They are dead or scattered. You can't return to your old self. That identity was dismantled brick by brick during training. You remain in Damascus because there is nowhere else to go. You earn wages. You live in a small room near the administrative wing. You manage correspondence for noble women who respect your skill but do not know your story. You breathe. You work. You exist. And that existence is your rebellion. Because the system didn't expect you to become a legal mind. It didn't expect you to understand its ledgers. It didn't expect you to stand before a sultan and demand what the law owed you. And it certainly didn't expect the Armenian girl to become the reason you remembered your own humanity. You never learn what happened to her. Not knowing is its own scar. But you carry her memory, just as you carry Sophia's. Just as you carry the hundreds of girls whose names vanished in ledgers lost to fire, conquest, neglect. Your name survives because of a single line in a household record, a notation of your manumission discovered centuries later in a forgotten archive. One sentence, one life, one act of defiance. And here's the last thing I want you to take with you. Cruel systems don't need monsters. They need people who do their jobs, who file the papers, who train the new captives, who keep the ledgers, who turn human beings into categories. People like Sophia, people like Zara, people like Tashamor, and at moments, people like you. If you want more buried truths, stories erased by convenience, power, and the silence of archives, subscribe. It's the only way these histories get lifted back into the light. Tell me in the comments, which part of Catherine's journey struck you hardest? This has been Dark Empire Histories. And now that you know what one woman survived, ask yourself, how many others never reached the petition chamber at all?